everybody. I decided to do another video here very different than what I usually do. This is not a repair video, it's actually a product review. I've never done a product review video before, but there's two reasons that prompted me to do this. Firstly, stands. These are the cheapest stands that are like real stands that you can buy on the internet that I've ever found. And we'll go over prices and such later on. They are Venom motorcycle stands. These particular ones were sold through Capsco Moto. I can put a link in the description. And they're a Canadian-based company. Now they're a Chinese-made stand, I'm sure. They look very similar to other Chinese stands, like a Black Widow comes to mind. And they're probably made by the same people or same factory or so and such. But I did not find a lot of information on them when I was looking to buy. There's maybe 2 videos on YouTube, one unboxing, one guy using them, but they didn't give me all the information I was looking for when looking for stands, so I bought these on a whim because I recently bought another bike that actually had spool adapters on it, and I wanted to get a proper rear stand. I made a rear stand, a bunk style one 10 years ago, out of 1.5 inch square tubing 1/8 wall, and that certainly is basically indestructible. And I don't have any issues using it, but I thought maybe I should get something real. And I wanted to have a front stand, and particularly a front pinhead stand, which this came with. And it also has the adapters to do an under fork style as well. And the pricing was just unbelievable. For a rear stand, whether it be spool adapters or paddle adapters, in US dollars on CapscoMoto.com, it's $36. That's $36. $36 for all that. So front and rear, rear style both ways, paddock, bunk, if you will, or spools, $36. Front stand with just the under fork style, which I can show you here as well a little later, is also $36. You can get the pinhead attachment for another like $35. But ultimately, what I've been buying, what I bought was the pair of stands. So this is the rear with spools, spool hooks, whatever you want to call it. And then this is a front stand that came with both the under fork lift and the pinhead. All of this can be had for $90 from CapscoMoto.com in US dollars. I keep commenting US dollars for this Canadian site, and at the top of the site there's a drop-down box to switch from Canadian dollars to US dollars with the exchange right now. Makes it a very sweet deal. They have free shipping on orders over $99, so if you buy just these stands, technically you wouldn't get the free shipping. But you could add the other set of adapters for $12, whether you want bunks or spools, whatever. And you could have free shipping, or alternatively they have $8 flat rate shipping on any order. So it's an incredible deal. And you think, well, they're really cheap, and I wanted them, and I wanted some real stands because I am a frugal person. And they definitely are not pit bulls, but we're going to go over more in depth into what they do. I've had this set of stands here for about 3 months, using them on my 98 R1, and the R1 has been on them all the time. It just sits on them. I don't often leave it on its side stand. I usually come back, put it on at least the rear. Usually I do the pins too as well. And it hasn't shown any signs of fatigue or anything. And so much so that I just bought another set, which are in boxes off to the side here, the bunk style stand for the rear for my 96 YZF, which does not have spools. And then I also bought another combination fork style and pinhead lift for it. And again, I'd like to go into detail on each of these stands when we get there. This is less about an unboxing or assembly, or more of just highlighting the features that you won't find when you look at product descriptions to see if these stands are going to be good enough for you. With that, I think we'll take the camera off the tripod and we'll bring you over and we'll look at some. For today, this box here contains both front and the rear stands. It just kind of comes bundled together. It comes with assembly instructions. It's pretty straightforward. You get a back hoop for front and the rear, and you get side pieces that have wheels on them ready to go, and there's stickers that you match up each side, and you bolt them together, and then you have a stand. Very straightforward assembly. They give you some basic instructions. There, what they are, what they contain. With this, we get a box of pins in the cardboard box, and the hardware for the lifting adapters, which I'll show you there. I also bought, this right here is what's called a trolley adapter. This is for your rear stand. It works with either spools or bunk. So obviously it's the same stand with just different adapters, but this piece here, you take the wheels off your rear stand, you attach it to this trolley. This third wheel you have to bolt on back here. And then once you have the bike up on the rear stand, you can roll it around and spin your bike around like full 360 and move it around the garage or shop supposedly very easily. I thought I would give it a try because I'm in a single garage here and I need to rearrange bikes to fit everything in here for winter time coming up. So I'm going to put this together and we'll test that as well. Again, there are no instructions, but it looks like a bolt to attach this rear wheel here. And we'll see how that works out. This is $41, $41. And I originally just wanted to buy that adapter so I could spin my R1 around the garage, but then I thought, well, I should have another set of stands for my 600 as well. And then I could have both styles of stands. And the other thing I didn't mention earlier is there's pretty much always at least a 10% off coupon for that website, Capsco Moto. So with the coupon, and I was buying this anyways, and I would have had to pay shipping, but then I bought both stands there, and then I got free shipping. If you work that out, if you do some tricky math to make yourself feel better, I essentially got another pair of these type of stands for like $75 to buy this, because my order for everything, this box of stuff in this here was like $127 shipped for everything. But again, they're not the be-all end-all in stands. We'll see more in depth of what they're made out of in the future once I get this unboxed. So I'm going to take these things out of the box. I will probably assemble them and maybe point out a couple features as we go along. Here are some of the components for the rear stand. You know it's the rear stand because this handle is a wider space than the front stands. We know that. And we know that the uprights with the wheels are for the rear because they have set screws on them for the in-out adjustments for your spools or paddles. So we know these components are for the rear. As far as assembly goes, they just slot in and then you run a bolt through, and there's a sticker on one of the legs that matches with a sticker on the handle for the right side, and you put your right to your rights and you slot. Key features here, there are these plastic bumpers on the one side that have an indexing pin that clip on, so that way the stand will rest on here and it will keep most of the metal off the floor, I assume, to prevent scraping, scratches, and also just act as a soft bumper. As a note, I mean, you can see some of the welding certainly is not the absolute best, not done by hand most likely, or to TIG. You can see some of this bubbling here maybe in the powder coat, but these are also really inexpensive, but maybe they're not worth it. Some features here that aren't on the websites: the tube outer diameter is inch and a quarter. I've noticed most stands, more expensive stands, will be inch and a half. I believe Pitbull is an inch and a half. I'm not sure what their wall diameter is, but so these are only inch and a quarter tubes, so they are smaller. So you can certainly infer from that that this is weaker than some of those other stands. Other brands like T-Rex is a popular, less expensive brand, but I think they're still about $120 for a rear stand, which is certainly cheaper than a Pitbull, which is what, $260-ish maybe. The T-Rex stands, I believe, are inch and a half tubing as well, and also the tubing thickness, wall thickness here is, let's put millimeters, make life easier on me. 2 mil. Near as it doesn't matter, say 2 millimeter thickness on the tubing ends here. So again, they're not super thick, but they certainly haven't appeared weak on my bike for just holding it up. If you're throwing it out of a truck, maybe it wouldn't wear as good as some of the others, but concessions are made for the price. That's what this is all about. It's all about bang for the buck. Certainly there are nicer stands, but the dollar amount comparison is astronomical really when you look at it that way. So this is what our handle is. It's all these are made out of the same inch and a quarter tubing, with what appears to be the same wall all the way through. The axle points here are a solid rod, and they are two pieces actually. It's interesting. You could probably pop one of these wheels off, which are held on with a snap ring and a washer, but it is a smaller diameter rod with a welded piece of round tubing here, and the rod pressed through where the pivot points on the wheels Wheels are just plastic. They seem pretty inexpensive, but there are 2 per side, so there is spreading the weight out that way as opposed to the single-wheeled ones. Wouldn't worry too much about it. What's interesting here, then, it necks down the tubing with a hole through it for the bolting together. But on the rear stand, this cap piece here, this is actually what was once a solid bar, and then they bored a hole through here, and it's a rough bore, but that's where your adjusters go, and then there's a set screw. So this piece from here to here was solid, and then it's welded to the end of the tubing. That's just an interesting way of doing things instead of using an insert. The front legs are actually different than that. They are all tubing with a insert pressed in, what appears. So again, differently built than some of the other stands. It's actually kind of nice. You'd have to assume that might be a little beefier when it was solid bar and then bored through. At this point here, let me switch over to the hardware that came with it, which in this case it came with 2 bolts to attach the legs to the handle section, which are in there, and then these are the paddles. They are spring loaded, and they have different hole positions here for our stops. So you can set a basic depth, I assume, with the cotter pin here. Sorry. This is not a cotter pin. This is a clevis pin, sorry. And then your paddles would sit through here. Let's pop this out, actually. Pull that. These suckers would go in here. And you can clip them in, here to here. And I believe their intention is that they would spin. Now you could take the spring out, then use the set screw on them, but I believe the set screw is more intended for the spool adapters, because you kind of would want these to pivot to go under there as you're lifting, so that moves. We'll try it out to get it together, and we'll figure it all out together. But also note these are solid bar. Some of the other ones, like the Black Widows, they use hollow bar here, hollow square tubing essentially, and then they have square tubing welded across as a T to slide through. Now I guess that would spread the weight out over a greater distance, but it's very small. It appears to be like 3/4 inch square tubing with a pretty thin wall. So you'd have a square tubing here sliding into square tubing there. And this is always bar, solid bar, including for the fronts too, which is another nice feature, I feel, of the Venoms that might set them apart. This is the first time I'm holding one of these paddles in my hand. It feels very robust, and hard to say. It's got a grip section down there. Lost my washer. And will the rubber coating split over time? Possibly. I'd actually say it's plastic coated. And the dimensions of this part here, we've got 50 millimeters this way, 50 that way, and with a depth of, say, 40 mils, and a height of 30 mils. Thickness here, 10 mil. And again, we'll call it 10 mil, but there is plastic coating on there. There's some holes here. We can actually check the depth of the coating if anyone was interested in that. 2.5 millimeters of plastic coating from the metal part. Presumably be the same on both sides, because we're just going off these little holes. So it feels somewhat robust. We will assemble the stand now and go on from there. Okay, I got this assembled. I've got the paddles on. A couple of nitpicky things. The holes bored here for the pins to go in, they're just bored kind of anywhere. They do appear to be on center, more or less, but it's not in the exact same spots. It really doesn't matter. But ultimately, I like them going this way because I can have the pin out of the way. But on this one, they're bored this direction instead of that direction. It really doesn't matter. When assembling, tighten these bolts good and tight, so this doesn't have any play. Otherwise, they'll rock down. So you're essentially going to be pinching the outer tube over the inner tube with the bolt. And I also put the carriage head side in, just thinking to having something less in the way for tires. So the lock nuts on the outside. They are, I think, an 8 millimeter X on this side, and with a 17 millimeter nut to tighten them. So these together, you can see that these legs will flex, but it's not flexing any more than my other rear has, and that's worked out fine. It is a little annoying, the spring loadedness of this. Depending on the bike you'd have to push it in. There's only 2 positions. You could drill more holes and add more positions here, which I might not do. I'm not even sure where this ends up hooking up on my YZF 600. tiny things to deal with. We'll see that when we get to it. Something else I didn't point out earlier, and a lot of the other cheaper ones, they won't have this cross brace here. And this cross brace is 3/4 inch round tubing, presumably the same wall, maybe not, 2 mil. On, I think the Black Widow brand, I believe they use 1.5 inch tubes, much like Pitbull or T-Rex. And they don't have a cross brace here, so apparently they feel it's strong enough without a cross brace once you go up to the 1.5 inch tubing. I don't know what wall size they are either, it could be quite a bit stronger. But it does give me some comfort seeing that there is a cross brace. Whether it helps much, I don't know overall. I'm going to test it out on the bike and we'll see how the paddle one works. Right now my front wheel of my 96 YZF600 is in a wheel chock, so it's locked in the vertical position. And it is true that the whole spring assembly makes life a little tough to do this one-handed while supporting the bike, and I had to squeeze out, flex them out to get them on there because they're pretty wide out. Would be quite annoying, but they do have to pivot, so I do think my plan will be, once I get this situated in a position that I like, I will probably drill some holes for the pins to keep them at a more appropriate position for what I'm after. Still allowing the spring tension to hold the sides in and cup it nice. Also, I just threw it on the back because it was easier. Depending on your bike, you might need to have the head of the axle or back on the axle. You just want to be able to have clearance to remove the axle should you choose to do that. But the more forward you are, the more chance of them sliding off. So I will, we're on the paddles, we'll push down, bike's up, and we are, I don't have very huge hands, but 4 fingers up on the tire. So what is that, 3 inches? Maybe 4, certainly enough to get the wheel off the ground. Stability, I will give this a shake. Sure seems pretty solid. This bike's pretty heavy. It's a steel frame. You know, to be honest, it's probably like 450, maybe 460 pounds. It's not a light 600 by any means. And you can feel it when you're lifting it up. I definitely feel it. It's heavier than the R1 over there. But I think it'll work out okay. So that's where we are on the rear stand with paddles. I will probably go over and maybe look at the trolley next. I thought maybe I should bring you in close so you can see how they actually sit in there. They cup the swing arm quite a lot. I feel that the paddle style, the bunk style that they've built is good. The actual part of it seems pretty alright. The instructions have you putting the washer next to the spring and then your pin out there, so you can see how much it had to travel, how much I had to flex it out to get it there. So with the bike just leaning against your leg while you're trying to hook it, could be an annoyance. You could take the springs out, but then they don't keep tension, it could walk. You can't do the set screw. So the solution is just going to be to drill another hole here. We'll hit it with a punch, drill out that hole, and I'll add another one for the pin so it'll lock it in this position. So this is the bike I'm using it on most. It should be good for that, but certainly won't detract from the functionality of using it on other bikes as well. But it's definitely in the air. It's doing its job. It feels secure. For $36. This is the trolley adapter. I have it assembled. The only assembly was putting on the back wheel, which was 2 bolts into welded captured nuts inside the tube. The entire thing is made out of 1-inch square tubing with the same 2mm wall thickness. You can see the bends. They do have kinking in them. And then we are using miter joints here and welded. They are dual caster front wheels, which is kind of nice. Both sides, and then a single caster in the rear. They do have locks on them. All the wheels have locks, which not only locks the wheels from rotating, but it locks the swivel in place too. So once you lock this down, you really shouldn't be able to move the bike at all, because it would be as if there was a stationary stand. But the idea is you add your rear stand that you already own to this, and then you can wheel your bike around. To attach it, you have to remove these clips. Get in here better. remove these clips, and then there is a hole. Once you take the wheels off your stand, you remove this pin and slide your wheel axle in the hole, replace the pin in the clip, and now it's on a pivot point. And when the stand is folded down, it rests on these dowels. We'll call them a dowel. These steel dowels here on either side lift the bike. So I need to remove the wheels from my rear stand. I'm going to do it to my spool stand that I already have. To do that, you just need a pair of snap ring pliers or some other method to undo a snap ring. And then we'll attach it to this. I have assembled the trolley to my rear stand with the spool adapters. I forgot to mention earlier, you do have to unbolt your legs because you need to have the handle removed in order to get each of these in to their position and after the wheels are off. You can see that it pivots in there just like so. While we're here, I guess I could show you what the spool adapters look like. They do have the rubber coating on them. Again, it's a solid bar, and then you use the set screw on them and then adjust from there. I've been happy with how these spools work on this. Things I don't like about the trolley, first time ever using one, all the weight of the rear stand ends up sitting on these dowels, which are not through, they're not passed through, they are just welded. I don't know how long that would work in the long run. It sure held it fine. I put it on there and I wheeled it around. It was very nice. I'll show you that. But there's something that I noticed. I guess it would have to. There's no way that the handle could be touching the ground and still allow you to spin it around. So when that comes down, it rests on the pins. And I mean, most of the weight is here, but you know, it wants to go back there. Also, your leverage is weaker. So when you normally use your rear stand and you get it over the top, you can tell that this just really wants to snap down on the ground because you're past the balance point on the front, and it holds it, pressing it down into the ground, and it does that on this too. But you can notice it's noticeably less because you're not going as much of an angle to the ground. You're stopping on those pins, so it doesn't seem very tippy or anything, but something to be aware of. It does its job, and well, I'll show you exactly how it all works. When you assemble it, just like I did before, you do. In this situation, you have to have the button head towards the inside, otherwise the nut will hit. So something to be aware of. I'm going to set it up on a tripod, and we'll lift this R1 up. Alright, let's lift my beautiful red and white 98 R1. So I'm just grabbing from the aluminum here and tipping the bike up towards the center, just like I would with any rear stand. And then I'm rolling this in, looking for my spools. I have engaged my spools. I start leveraging down, holds the bike in place. We go down. Okay, we are on the trolley. And yeah, here's what it looks like. Let me go a little bit more forward for you. I'm wiggling it. You can see it dances a bit, but it does completely allow me turn my bike in whatever direction you want it to be. So if you need your bike to go full sideways towards the front of your garage for winter storage, this trolley will definitely make that possible, which is kind of what my goal was. But it rolls very nice, it feels great. I like the concept of the trolley. Resting on the pins is what makes me nervous down there, all that weight. Also with the three-wheel design, you have to try hard. But if you got enough weight on here, you can kind of start tipping. I don't know how that would ever happen in regular use though. You wouldn't think it would, but anything's possible. It is awfully easy to spin around if you need to spin your bike around for storage. It's a really trick solution. I'll lock the wheels for you. Easy to lock with your feet, hard to unlock with your feet. You gotta bend over for that. But now the wheels are locked, it definitely isn't gonna roll away. Certainly don't leave it on the hill, but you wouldn't want to do that really with any stand, but it does lock. But you can see there's some bounce to it, there's some flex in the whole setup. I don't think I would worry so much. It's one of those things though that, me being me, the first time I'd use it, I'd probably be in the garage. Put it up on there while I was out there for a few hours and make sure it held, and figure, you know, if it held for 3 hours, it's probably just going to hold, kind of deal. But in the long run, it turns out I don't actually need this at this moment because I'm not going to be storing these the way I thought they were, so I will probably undo the trolley attachment and just go back to a standard spool stand, because that's probably where it's going to sit. But I'm glad I have it. It can be a useful tool. Yeah, it does what it needs to do. I kind of just wish those resting pins were beefier. They're just better engineered, but they must have thought that it was okay. But who's the they in that situation, I guess, is the question. Now we're back to freewheeling. We're wheeling around. Hope there was enough good camera to realize this is easy to do. And I think I will... Well, heck, I might just leave it on there for a while, see what it's like. If that broke, it would tip to one side, the bike would probably fall off. If they both broke, well then the handle would just go all the way to the ground. And then, you know, that probably wouldn't hurt anything. And I have to think that of the amount of minimal effort it takes to lift this to get it past that point, there probably isn't that much weight on those pins being transferred, being all on those forward legs. You would hope that's how they intended to design the thing. Again, I can just, one finger I can lift it off. So it's probably only a couple of pounds resting on that. But this bike is relatively light. It's something in the low 400s, supposedly. It's certainly lighter than my 600, because it's steel frame. But, yeah. This trolley definitely works. And that's how it works. I'm going to push this off to the side. Free up some space here. Get back over yonder. And I'm going to move on to the front stand, give you a view of that and the different options. These are the pieces of the front stand. Front stand handle is narrower than the rear stand handle, of course. Same little plastic pads. Same 1.5" 2mm tubing. Very similar to the rear handle, other than its dimension. These are the front legs. We'll call them legs. Same dual wheel setup. Snap ring washer each side. The cinch down end to go into the male end to go in the female end. This is the top I was talking about before. So it has this is steel, it has a welded cap on it. And then this sure looks like it must just be pressed in piece of tubing here through this hole that they bored, because I am not seeing any welding on it. So I'm assuming that's just a press fit. So that's how your front fork adapters go through into this round hole, and that's how you know these are the front legs. Same legs on both things. Hardware comes with 2 bolts to assemble the legs to the handle. This is the front fork adapters. This big piece of steel here is to weight them so they fall down when they're in the stand. Keep them aligned like that. There is an angle to these, what would be a front and what would be a back. This kind of swoops in an upward angle. If I recall, this is the back side. Yes, the back side is higher. So this would be your bike, this would be your fork, this would be the back of the fork, this would be the bottom of the fork, and it would hook like that. There are more holes in this one. Now I've used these adapters on the front stand I already have, which was also a Venom stand. And the hole size is basically for any sport bike you're going to be all the way in, as I recall. But these pre-drilled holes worked fine for all the bikes I've tried to use them on, which have just been sport bikes, which is probably the most intended use. You can see that they are, again, solid metal. They pass through the plate and then are welded as well. And I'll give you some dimensions here. The plate is 5 mils thick. The rods that would support your fork legs, I'm just doing a little guesstimating, looking at the end of them, 10 mil. And you get 3mm of rubber on each side, and this actually is rubber, and I guess they could ultimately split, but they do come off, so you could replace them with something else in the future if you needed to, with some hose, or possibly you can buy replacement parts for these. I've never actually tried, but it seems to be the thickness that should hold up, and I like that it's all ribbed so it can grab better, which truthfully all front fork stands seem to be designed this way. So it looks very similar to most other under fork style stands, performs as well as those two. I have used some more than a few stands off and on, borrowing people's whose were much more expensive and truthfully nicer, but perform the same task. So I'm going to assemble this, and we will use the front fork here, and we'll probably continue to lift the arm on the 600 cylinder wheel chock. I don't really feel like rolling it out right now. So let me put it together, and then we will just do a quick demo of how this works. Okay, we have the front fork stand assembled. We have our lifting, I don't know, we'll call them pads, on there at their widest setting. Again, it would be nice if there was a little bit wider still. Drilling another hole would probably solve it, because at its widest it's just barely wide enough. And ideally you might even get another maybe 1/8 of an inch this way, just to make sure that this all clears everything here. It's still very doable as is. I don't usually use the stand this way. I prefer the pin stand. But, that being said, what you want to do, this one will hook behind the lower fork leg. This one you want to have in line with the axle bolts as best you can. I already have it on the rear stand, still on the rear stand with the trolley. But you can see here, it'd be nice if that just kind of moved out a little bit further. And I'm pretty happy with how it's aligned. And just push down. And front tire's off the ground. This one isn't as high, but the tire's a bigger diameter, say 3 fingers height. So 2.5, 3 inches. But it's definitely up in the air, and it will work to service your bike. I'll give it a shake. You'll see it, I mean, it will wiggle, it will flex a little. Why would you shake it? I don't know. Specifically, these stands do have stickers on there that say you're not supposed to sit on the bike when they're on the stand. So, again, they're really only for lifting the bike, not you and the bike overall. Like the homemade rear stand I made out of the other tubing, I put me and 3 friends on there, and I don't believe it would ever break. Just because it's way beefy, because it's the steel it had at the time. However, it definitely does the job as is, and I do prefer the pin style stand, so that's what I will be bolting on that adapter. I'll show you what comes with that. And we'll leave it in a pinhead style stand. That. You can see that not everything is very straight right now. I mean, this should be more that way. You can see it's kind of cocked. It's certainly not as nice as others, but it is lifting the bike. And I feel confident in it as of now that it's going to continue to lift the bike. So, I'm going to put her down. Like a lady. And we'll put on a pinhead. This is the front pinhead stand, or head lift stand, whatever you want to call it. I've always grown up calling it a pinhead stand, because there's a pin that goes into the steering stem where the steering head, that's pinhead lift stand. So it's an adapter for the front lower that you've already seen. So you would take off those bunk style things and you put this on. Same 1.5 inch and a quarter tubing, 2 mil wall, but it does have the neck bracing, which I like. There are others that don't use neck bracing, but they're using a beefier tube, so I feel like they are compensating for their smaller, weaker tube by adding the brace structure to it. This rubber piece here, I think it's very nice. This is a little cushion because you're actually going to be lifting. This could touch the bottom of your stem, and I feel this is a good coating, and it'll keep you from nicking things up. I'm very happy with this attachment piece overall. It's pretty simple, and I think simple works, but again, a rip-off design of so many other stands out there, just cheaper manufacturing overseas with probably cheaper materials. It's interesting, so the tube is still 2 mil, but the flange adapters here are a bit thicker. And they are, I'm using my guesstimators here, 4.5 millimeter, so I'll probably say 4 without coatings on there. So these are twice as thick, this portion of pinhead adapter. So you get this big piece of steel here, and you get these pins, which go through here. You attach it to the other part of the stand you've already seen. And then there are pins that go through to lock it in place. This, I think we're going to call it a clevis pin with an attached keeper. Slots through here, so when you put your pin in there, that holds it in place. Comes with 2 more bolts to attach your legs to your handle. I'm not sure why it comes with that. It must be a hardware packet in other stands as well. So they give you those 2. You don't need them. You can get 5 pins of the most common size. And pretty much every head stand you buy comes with these same 5 pins. These are the most common pins, or they've decided are the most common pins. And these are the ones they give you. And they are engraved on the top. I don't know if you can see the numbers, which is nice for keeping it straight. But the usuals. You have a 17, a 15, a 13, a 16 and a half, which is what my R1 uses in a lot of Yamaha stuff, and an 18. However, it does not come with a 21 millimeter, to 1 millimeter pin. And most of them don't, and that is what my 600 YZF requires. You can probably buy pins from other manufacturers. I've never actually seen Venom pins for sale, but they must exist somewhere. But again, I think they're saying like a Black Widow and such. You can buy Black Widow pins. The base shank diameter is 19 millimeters. So as long as whatever pin you're buying is 19 millimeters here, and then whatever appropriate millimeters there, it will fit in your stand. So it wouldn't necessarily have to be the same brand, but you would have to know those dimensions, and that just slots in there, and then you clip it, and now you have the appropriate pin installed. But in my situation, I tried buying a pin a while ago, back when I just had my one set of stands, and I found a place that would sell me a 21 mil pin, and I wasn't sure about the diameter, but I thought I would just test it anyways. But then they told me they didn't have it anywhere. Excuse me for walking off camera, I was getting something. They didn't have that pin in stock and they couldn't sell it to me, so then I just said screw it, I'll just make one. So I bought a bolt. It was the right dimension here, 21 millimeters here. This was the shank of the bolt. I think it was a 7/8 bolt, what's 21 mils in standard. Yeah, I think 7/8. Irrelevant. But I bought a bolt, and I cut it, and then I cut it, and then the threads here, well, obviously they needed to go away, and the root of the thread happened to be 19 mils, so I just used my bench grinder and I ground away the thread, and then I drilled a hole, and now I have a 21 millimeter, sorry, this is actually 22 millimeter for my YZF 600, because I stamped it 22 millimeter YZF 600 head attachment. So my point is, you can sure make your own of these if you find something that's steel, probably steel, or probably could get by with aluminum, but metal that's about the right size, grind it to what you need, drill a hole, and then you're fine. And it definitely works as is. It's perfectly serviceable head pin, which I've used before with my other stand that I already own. But this one's going to find its home permanently here because this is for my 600. Alternatively, I have done, you take a socket that's the right dimension, diameter of your steering head hole, and slide that over the most close pin that you have, and you can get by with that if you ever really were in a bind and needed to lift something with the steering head to service forks. The point is there's always ways around it, but if you need to buy other pins, just remember that your base diameter needs to be 19 millimeters to fit in a Venom pin head stand. I'm going to attach it to my lower half of my front, and this thing will be a head lift stand. I have the pinhead adapter assembled to our front fork lifting stand, pinned together there, the appropriate head pin on. I'm going to slide it in here just to demonstrate how this particular Venom stand handles it. Works the same as pretty much any other head stand, but this is how these inexpensive Venoms do it. We are not hitting the plastics, it's holding on the pin just like it should. We are standing. Not hitting or hurting, and we are definitely lifted. I could be more straight, give it a wiggle. Yes, it will wiggle some, but again it holds, and I am still on the trolley, which adds a little extra play to the back end. But it definitely does the job lifting. So overall, I've been pretty happy with the Venoms, happy enough at least to buy another set. Get this on here. Only issue I've had with my other one, or any of these stands, on only the front stand, this plastic part here, the weight must transfer on it more heavily than on the rear, or if it's just using the fork, under fork style lift, and it cracked one. And I tried just gluing it back down, put it on there, but it cracked again. And I wanted to have these spacers on there, so all I've done is I've put them back on, and I just wrapped electrical tape to hold them together. And it hasn't been an issue since. That happened pretty quick when using them. That was a weak point there. I don't know if it just happened to hit just right to crack one, or it was weak. It was only the one side, but I did wrap both in electrical tape. Haven't had any issues on the rears. the rubber guard off the end of this. I never actually done this before, but I wanted to see how this was constructed. And well, it had to have been solid steel, at least here, because it got bored through here. And on the edges, hard to see with my crappy camera, but it's not hollow here. So to me, it doesn't look like this was tubing and then they put in an insert, although they could have. But I also don't see any weld lines here, and it is, you know, blocked off on both sides. And this end cap doesn't look like it's a welded on cap like the others. So I'm wondering if this is a solid piece of steel. That seems unlikely, but the way it's bored in the grain I'm seeing, I'm not seeing any weld, and I think they just machined this edge off. I feel like it could be. So this could possibly be a solid piece, this top tube here. This neck, we'll say, with this bracing, which would be a nice feature. I'm honestly not sure how I would tell that. You would think it would have to be tubing because they don't want to make it cheap, but I just don't see how this would have worked out otherwise. You'd think it could just be a part of it, and did they weld it and then machine it so nice that you couldn't tell? Seems like an extra step. I guess the only way to really know would be to drill a hole in one, and I don't really think I'll be doing that. I undid the trolley adapter and went back to just a standard spool style rear for the R1 there. I used it though to position the R1 off to the side like that. I didn't have to open the door and Austin powers my way back and forth to get it in position where it needs to go. So that was nice. Just pushed the tail end over and worked the front with it. It seemed perfectly stable. I just would like it to have more time to prove itself while I'm around. Not that I can really do anything when it starts to go. I doubt I could get there to hold it. So there's some truth to that I probably could just leave it that way. It sure seems stable. But this is going to be sitting this way for winter, and these stands had been holding the bike for a couple months, so I was happy with that configuration, so that's what I went back to. And then the 600, I have on the paddles, and I did drill another hole and drill another hole so I could space them out easier. That made a big difference to do it yourself. Without that, getting those springs in there is tricky to balance everything. You could alternatively stack a bunch of washers on the one side to draw it this way more. That would work too, if you don't want to drill a hole. And I'm using the pin head on both sides, so my tires are off the ground, my front forks are unladen, so I can avoid any spring memory. I do have that wheel chock there, and I just kind of flipped it out of the way. Normally I use that in summer just to lock things in. If I'm servicing, just easier to drive into that and throw it up on a rear stand. But I wanted to have the forks unsprung for winter storage. So I went with that option, just flipped that out of the way, because I am in a single garage, and I still have to get a car in this space, but it will work fine. Battery died there for a second, picking this up. Just talking about the value of them, that price is unbeatable, and I think that they are worth that money and more. They do as they're advertised. I feel confident in them. Again, I've had that bike there up on them for a couple of months. You know, every day. I was very nervous at first, but I kind of came to trust them, and I will probably check on this one too. Of course, if something breaks, what can I really do about it? But still, I think they're okay for doing what they're supposed to do, which is just lift a bike. And if you need to service them, you can. I've done fork jobs with the triple stand there. I didn't have any issues, never felt weird about it. You could argue torquing like axle nuts, which get up to, 80 plus foot-pounds sometimes. Adding that extra load to the stand may not be the best thing. Maybe better to snug it up and tighten it when it's back on the ground. You can make that argument. That's probably fair. I have done it, and it worked. Probably isn't the best way to go, though. But I think they are a decent value. I have no affiliation with them. I just stumbled upon this when I was hunting for stands. They are sold on Amazon. They are not Prime eligible, though. They're also on eBay. But I found buying straight from the website usually is the best deal. I think their initial prices are a little higher because on eBay they usually come with free shipping. The price is higher. Same with that. But once you're able to use that coupon on their website, that makes it the cheapest way to go. And I've liked them enough. I've bought 2 sets now. And I think if you're interested in stands and are on a budget, this is the best budget stand out there. They're certainly far better than the Harbor Freight rear stand that you can buy, and Harbor doesn't have a front. Both styles of the Harbor stands I feel are very sketchy. I have used them. I don't own them, but I've had friends who have them and use them. They lift, but they don't seem as good as these. These are traditional stand design, however, smaller tubing, but with the bracing. But as far as the pad adapters and the spool adapters and the pinhead part, all those parts seem really great. If it was a bigger diameter tube, everything would be great, but then it'd probably be a lot more money.
So the next upgrade from this probably would be the T-Rex stands, like I say. So you go from a $36 rear stand to, $130, possibly cheaper if you find them on sale. I'm not positive on that price. So it's a considerable upgrade in that, and they are beefier, without a doubt. I have used those as well. They're very nice, and certainly not either of them are as nice as pit bulls, and they're crazy money, and they're also made in the USA, which is a good thing, and their finish is better. These, I'm assuming, are powder coated, and that's probably our biggest risk here, is that finish is going to get chipped and nicked off, and then you'd have to worry about rusting, and if they start to rust, then you compromise your strength, and you really couldn't trust them anymore. Versus the plating process, I believe, that the other stands go through, you shouldn't have that issue. So that's something to be aware of. If you throw them around a lot, or a slider in a trailer, they'll probably get nicked up, and then you'd have an issue of rust and strength issues possibly down the road that the more expensive stands wouldn't have. So you'd want to keep your eye on any exposed areas and clean off any surface rust, and then coat it with something so it doesn't continue to rust. That's probably the big issue that you might have to worry about, which does concern me slightly, because I might get water in here in the spring. Usually not much, just a coating on the floor, and they're off the floor because of those plastic pads. So I'll keep an eye on that too, because I don't want them sitting in water, because they would definitely rust out, I'm sure, very quickly. And as far as the Trolley goes, I think it's pretty useful. I think you would have no issues buying that and trusting that. It seemed pretty legit to me. And again, this is a heavier bike, and these seem just as good as on that bike. And there's not too many sport bikes that are above 500 pounds. Maybe some sport touring, truthfully. But overall, I think if you're considering stands and on a really tight budget, how about this? If you're considering stands and know that you wouldn't buy a stand if it was $150 or higher per stand, then buy these. And if you elect to go with the cheaper stand, I don't think there's any other cheap stand that would be better that I've seen. I think these are the ones to get if you're not willing to commit $150 plus per stand and just spend less than $100 to get both stands, or even less to just get the one. Plus you get the option of the trolley adapter. It's kind of neat. I think that's all I have to say. I've really exhausted this topic. I just wanted to share this because it was something that I had not seen on YouTube. Anybody go into depth about this? So when I first bought them, it was just well, let's see what they are. They're cheap enough. And I did, and I was pleased enough to buy another. And I wanted to pass that info on to you guys.